librarians are the ones that talk across departments, across programs, and also have this whole other like realms of knowledge that your lab might not necessarily have. And so that's where, to me, the librarians have been really key and have been some of like the most beneficial people to know on campus.
So I'm Rebecca Wingfield, and I'm here with Jessica Jordan, and we want to welcome new graduate students to Stanford, and we're going to talk a little bit today about the libraries. And I thought I would just start off by asking you, Jessica, if you had any advice for new graduate students, if there was anything you know now as a more experienced graduate student that you wished that you had known when you were a first-year graduate student at Stanford.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I wish I had known is just to start using the library sooner. I think when I arrived at Stanford, I was like a little intimidated by how big it was, like the library and also Stanford itself. And so I didn't come in, I think, until I had to write my final papers. And I think also get to know your subject librarians, maybe especially in the time of coronavirus, because again, the library can seem big, it can seem like this institution, but really it's filled with people, with really wonderful people who want to support you with your work and have a lot of expertise and knowledge that can help you discover new things. So
any advice for graduate students, new graduate students?
Check out the DVD collection once we can go back to perusing it. It's like being in a Blockbuster again. It's really fun.
Not only is it like being at a Blockbuster, but it's like being at a Blockbuster where you can check out non-Region 1 format DVDs, and they actually also have places that you can play them in medium microtext. So you don't have to worry about not having the compatible player. It's really cool resource to know about.
It's the best of both worlds.
Hey, so.
Hey Ray, how you doing?
Hi Ray.
I'm good, how are you guys?
Pretty good.
So would you have a particular sort of survival tip for someone who's brand new coming in to start their research?
I have maybe not so much a survival tip, but just like random tips that maybe aren't the most exciting, but have certainly been useful. I've really gotten into finding things on SearchWorks. And so one tip that I didn't know about until this summer was to use I think it's called the browse related items function. So when you look up a book and then you click on the title and you just scroll to the bottom of the page, it says browse related items, and then it will show the books by call number around your book. So it's essentially like browsing the shelves of the library. Using the browse related items function has really changed the way that I look for books when I'm at home, and it's an easy way to find important literature.
About it is that you're browsing, it doesn't matter what physical library the item is in, they all line up in one row.
Did not know that existed, so thank you.
A little tip, a little survival tip.
I would say definitely don't be afraid to explore new directions. I think if I looked back today on my personal statement when I was coming into Stanford, I would think, I don't know who this person is. Like, there's a lot of pressure to start churning stuff out immediately and to get going on your research path, but take a year or two if you can afford it and just sort of sit back, explore courses outside your department, find new research areas.
I don't know if you have advice for people who actually need to get away from their studies for a minute.
I'm still working that one out, I think. I will say two things. One is just, I think beyond a certain amount of time that you put into your research, you actually do start to see diminishing returns. So do take time off for yourself. Your research will probably actually benefit from it. Meet people and talk to them and eat and drink with them. Second thing, go and walk around the dish or around Lake Lagunita. Someone told me they're like the big hamster wheels of campus. You kind of go around and work the stress off. And also they got good views and you might meet some cool animals. And they're right on the edge of campus, and it might help remind you, like, grad school isn't everything. There is a world out there.
final words for new graduate students? Anything that we missed?
I mean, this might sound trite, but just believe in yourself and do your best. I mean that. I think I find it comforting as a grad student to know that if you just do your best, what you know to be your best effort, it's usually enough. It got you here, and it will probably be enough. And you know, you can only really control your own actions. So don't worry about everything else. Just prioritize yourself. Believe in yourself. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and if you're doing your best, then you will probably succeed. So just, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and just love yourself. That's my advice.
Great to see you. What's your one library tip that you wish you knew coming into Stanford?
Out of anywhere on campus, your options for how you learn is usually in the course of, you can take a quarter-long course for like 10 hours a week plus whatever homework, and that's how you are supposed to build knowledge. But there's like this middle ground of where you need to build specific skills to answer the questions you're trying to answer, and that's where the libraries have really come in, of how do you learn R, or how do you learn the basics of ArcGIS, or how do you learn how to use like the ArcGIS collector apps, or there's a whole bunch of these other like data science components that are integral to all sorts of different systems and different disciplines on campus that aren't really taught outside of the library. And I also really wish that I had I'd known about Zotero or other bibliography software pieces. That's been a lifesaver in terms of timing.
Sorts of, you know, in terms of the physical spaces of the Stanford libraries, do you have any favorite spots where you can, you know, find some quiet time to get something done, things like that?
Yeah, I know like my all-time favorite spot in any Stanford library is, I think like the Hopkins Marine Station Library is the most beautiful building and place that that I know of at Stanford. Yeah, whoever is watching this, if you ever have the chance to go down to Monterey, you are a Stanford affiliate, and that library is open during the week, just like go into that reading room and take a while to just read something while looking out over the ocean as it crashes on the beach right in front of the library. Like, you can't beat that.
Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Kam. I'm head of the Bose Art and Architecture Library, and I'm here with an art history graduate student named Marcelo Yanez. So the first question is, what do you know now about the libraries that you wish you knew when you were a new graduate student?
While the collections are very extensive, I feel like when you're working on seminar papers, you need a lot of material, and a lot of it might not be on site. And so you have to request it through Borrow Direct or ProQuest. And I think just start looking for developing your bibliography early on in the quarter and getting as many books as you need, because you have to give yourself like a week or two for things to show up, especially since we're on the West Coast and a lot of things are coming from the East Coast.
What are the, you know, like the 1 to 3 aspects that you most appreciate about the Bose Library?
I love the space, but I think about the lock stacks and how you can be sitting on your computer and find something in SearchWorks that's in the lock stacks and just go and see it 10 minutes later or whenever, in a way that, and it's material that I think at other institutions is in special collections, but because the special collections are split up into different reading rooms at Stanford, it makes it easier for me to look at, you know, this rare book. So I really appreciate the lock stacks in terms of access. I think it's a very like practical model.
Thank you very much, Marcelo, for a great interview and for your insights. I just want to make a few more comments about the Bose Art and Architecture Library. So it's in a part of campus that's very different from, say, the main humanities quad and green library. It's in an area of the campus that's kind of like a mini arts district. And so it's got the Cantor Center for Visual Art, it's got the Anderson Collection, and then the McMurtry building where the Bose Art and Architecture Library lives is the home of the Department of Art and Art History. So just a plug for people to come and visit the beautiful Bose Art and Architecture Library.
It's great to see you, Charlotte. And thank you so much for talking with us during this new graduate student orientation. I know you and I have worked together too, because as you've been a more advanced student, you've been able to teach your own class. And not only teach it, but teach it online last quarter, which was quite an amazing feat to have to pivot in the middle of COVID. Mm-hmm. I guess I wondered if you wanted to say a few words about how graduate students can partner with librarians as they design their own courses or as they are putting together a syllabus.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can say a little bit about the things that I did that I think worked out well. One of the things that was really important to me in designing my own course was making sure that the materials were accessible to everybody. So I didn't want the students to have to purchase some $150 textbook. And so in doing that, I made sure that the primary sources were things that were accessible through our digital archives. And then you and I partnered together to get ebooks of the major secondary sources that the students were going to be working with. And I was so happy that we did that because in March, having all that already online was so helpful. I didn't have to scramble at all. But other things that we did that I think worked really well was having an introduction for you and for also Salim Mohammed from the David Rumsey Map Center. Those two visits were really helpful for the students in thinking through what kinds of sources are available and how they might use them in their own research projects. And then I think the third thing, which was super, super valuable for the students, but also for me, was in the class, you helped me build up a database of databases. So thinking about the kinds of collections that are available online and how they might be useful or applicable to the kinds of research that the students in my class were doing and also that I am doing. It was nice to have that kind of curated list because it can be so much to sort through SearchWorks. So having a little bit of curation was really, really valuable.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, no, it was really fun to partner with you on that class. I know you've been a heavy user of special collections materials. So I wondered if you could say a little bit about how working with special collections materials here at Stanford have informed your teaching, obviously your research, and how if you would encourage fellow grad students to seek out those kinds of materials.
Absolutely. I think I have been a graduate teaching assistant for Professor Carolyn Winterer for a number of years now. And one of the most exciting parts of teaching for her in the Stanford Summer Humanities Institute, which is actually working with high school students, is that we come to special collections. And so one of the things that we talk about is the American Revolution. And one of the items that students are always so excited to see is the censored version of Thomas Paine's Common Sense. And then somebody's handwritten in what was censored out. And they always think that that's so exciting. So moments like that where you're actually getting to interact physically with these materials is really, really cool. And it's really neat to see students light up as they see these things for the first time.
Hey, hello Danielle, how's it going? How's your afternoon so far?
It's going well, thank you.
What I'm interested in is if you could talk about a little bit how you first visited the archive of recorded sound.
Yeah, so I actually partook in a new graduate student orientation, just like this will become on campus in the first week, in the orientation week. And so I got to preview some of the holdings and attend your lecture on what's available. And then also part of my required coursework in TAPS, I take a historiography class in which the professor also had us visit.
So do you have any tips on like how people might think about how they're going to use the libraries during this time?
In general, I'd say explore, because I found such interesting things in the archive that have not been part of my necessarily my scholarly work yet, but they've contributed indirectly to thoughts I've had, and they're also just really interesting to listen to. And also, do not feel, if you are not a music PhD or TAPS PhD or some related, what one would think is a related field to what would be the archive of recorded sound, do not hesitate. The library is meant for all, and you can be from any field and certainly find things of interest and worthwhile to your research here. When things open up, visit the archive of recorded sound.
Hi, Anna. Nice to see you again. It's been a
Hi.
while. Yeah.
Yes, it has.
Okay, so let's get started. Was there a big change in your library use, or your what you look to the library for as a graduate student?
Definitely has become more, it's like a collegial kind of setting at Stanford. And I think the library really does create this kind of feeling of that you do belong in there, regardless of what discipline you're coming from. And that's something I felt differently about here than I did in undergrad.
What would you say is your number one tip to graduate students for, getting going as quickly as possible and being self-sufficient in the library?
The number one tip I say is make SearchWorks your best friend. It's an amazing resource, and just know how to use it properly. I find also that using WorldCat, if people don't know about that, WorldCat is like an aggregator of libraries all over, which is great if you want to get something from BarDirect, or which is the consortium of libraries that Stanford is a part of, or from Berkeley, which is even faster. And that's been super useful. Also, Xsearch, which is or cross search, I guess. If you go on the library page, you can find it, and that's for articles. And I found so many I work on the Spanish Empire, and that even includes like these really obscure Spanish language journals that from the 80s, that are out of print, and somehow I can usually find them in some sort of way. And if I can't find anything, then you can always interlibrary loan. So knowing those are the systems, probably the way that I interact with the library the most.
We're in the middle of the coronavirus situation right now. The physical library was closed for a while. Library operations didn't close at any time. They were just mostly online. Now we're partially open. And have you had a chance to go into the library since
I have, yeah, I've been back twice.
And what would your advice be to graduate students coming in for whom this will be the reality of the library when they start, and probably for, I would guess at least a quarter or two?
One thing that I find very helpful with being in the library now is that I signed up for a Carol. So you may not be thinking you want one, but I would recommend putting your name. If you want your own study space, you can put your name down as soon as you can. And there's Carols for people who haven't reached candidacy, and then there's Carols for people who have reached candidacy. So you can, and there's lockers too, which everyone should get at least one of those, so you can store stuff there. And also, and again, I guess this is basically the theme of everything I'm going to say, is not to be intimidated by the system. It's very, very easy. Super easy. You just have to do the health check, which takes about 1 minute, and then signing up for the appointment, which I found now when it first opened, it was a little bit hard to get appointments on the same day, but now you can sometimes I'm on campus and I think, oh, I'll go to the library, and I open it up on my phone and there's an appointment in 15 minutes. And so I just sign up and then I can go in. So it really you shouldn't feel like if you didn't make an appointment in enough time, the door is closed, because it's really not the case that I've found in my experience. And it's there for you, right? The system is to help stagger people and for our health. So I hope that new students, even though we have this kind of odd system that seems a little bit gatekeepy, should not be interpreted in that way at all. My experiences in the library have been, it just is, great. And I've even seen friends who are also there.
And unless you have something you'd like to really add as a last message, I don't have any more questions for you. I think that was great. Thank you very much for doing it.
If anyone is, nervous about bothering anyone or afraid, like, the library is there for us, and it's still very, very accessible during COVID, which is great and shouldn't be ignored.